Hey everyone, this is Chris, and this is the second episode in our From the Vault series. This one, unlike our Ninja Turtles episode, wasn't recorded potentially over a year ago. This was actually recorded in the fall or early winter of last year. Just again, a couple things popped up where there were more immediate pressing episodes. And sometimes I like recording episodes where I don't have to have them out that week. But it's been much longer than I intended. So since we've already dropped one from the vault, here's the next. In today's episode, we are ranking the X-Men movies and then ranking the spin-offs. Hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio, and today we are joined by nobody, it's just me. We are forgoing the video component today just because, I'll be honest, I'm sick and I'm feeling pretty rough, but to keep my mind off of being sick, I decided, the heck with it, I'm going to record a podcast. Today's episode might be a little bit shorter, but we'll see how it goes. I want to give a particular shout out to Becky from Redeemed Otaku, who has messaged me a couple times just to let me know she's keeping me in her prayers. Thank you so much, Becky. I appreciate that a lot. And I pray for you and your husband and your ministry and your podcast. You guys are wonderful. Also want to shout out, as always, Cardboard Koinonia, Faith and Fandom, and a bunch of others. You guys are great. Today's episode is also partially inspired by a couple episodes of Hot Takes with Billy Business. Also want to shout out Billy Business himself. It's always really cool when people who have any level of notoriety or celebrity actually take time to message people back. I have messaged Billy a couple times just to be like, hey man, really like your show, love what you guys do, and we've had some cool conversations, even brief ones. So Billy, on the off chance you're listening, means the world, man. Thank you so much. It's really cool when people who do have, like I've said, any level of celebrity take the time to actually respond to those comments. What's also really cool is a lot of the Power Rangers actors are really active within the fandom. So, oh man, like shout out to Johnny Young Bosch, Steve Cardenas, Jason David Frank. Oh man, why am I freezing on his name? I always freeze on his name. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Zach Power Rangers. Walter Emmanuel Jones. You guys have been wonderful. And I see a lot of Ranger actors. Oh, also the dude who plays Wes. Dang it. Come on, just give me the actor's name. Man, this little part sucks. Jason Font. Thank you so much for how you interact with the fan community and have liked posts. And it does. It gets you excited. It's awesome. Anyways, today's episode, we are looking at ranking the X-Men movies from worst to best, and then we're going to also rank the spin-offs worst to best. I don't want to rank them all because they're all together, because they're all very, very different movies and they succeed and fail for different reasons. So with that being said, let's get to it. To me, the worst X-Men movie is still X-Men The Last Stand. It is a very, very disappointing X-Men movie. It has way too much going on. It wastes the Dark Phoenix story, which is one of, if not the most famous X-Men story. It really ruins that potential. The whole Cure story could be incredibly engaging in and of itself, but it doesn't get the time to develop because they're also focused on the Dark Phoenix stuff and trying to wrap up a trilogy and having characters die off for no real reason and just wiping everything. Oh, Luna just made some noise. It's weird. It's everything gets undercooked. They chop at least half an hour, if not 40 minutes off the runtime for what the average X-Men movie was at this point, and everything kind of suffered for it. There were some good things in it. The Danger Room scene where Logan lights his cigar off of a smoldering heap on top of a car is classic Wolverine, very in tune with the character. That part's great. Beast being played by Kelsey Grammer is an outstanding casting choice that should, if ever possible, always be recreated. He was excellent, and Ellen Page as Kitty Pryde was great. But that's about it. There's the fastball special was cool, but Colossus underdeveloped. His Kitty's romance with Iceman and Rogue and all that, it's undercooked. The whole movie is really underserved, so that's why it's dead last. Up next is, I'll admit, a little bit of a cheat, but there's parts in both that are good, but I'd put them on pretty equal footing. Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix both share a lot of the same problems of undercooked ideas, rushed story. In Apocalypse, legitimately Magneto is there for no reason other than, well, we need to get Magneto in this. In Apocalypse, friggin' Mystique is thrust to being the head of the X-Men. There's not really any follow-up to Days of Futures Past, which is quite annoying. Quicksilver is there for another great Quicksilver sequence. To give credit, now that we're complimenting it, to give credit where it's due, even though the Weapon X sequence was unneeded, I loved it. It was seeing Wolverine actually... I'm always down for seeing Wolverine rip apart a bunch of people, especially in that classic Weapon X getup. That was great. The new cast did well, just also underutilized. Nightcrawler was kind of Nightcrawler, but not really. They didn't have him do anything egregious like, murder a bunch of people like he did in Dark Phoenix. But he was undercooked. Everybody, unless you were friggin' Mystique, was kind of undercooked. Having some Havoc return was kind of cool. Scott's brother coming back was neat, but on the whole, Apocalypse is a waste. The final nice touch I liked was when the 3 out of the 4 horsemen were going to yet again wasted Angel a second time, and Metallica's 4 Horsemen was playing. That was a nice touch. But yeah, it wasted Angel a second time. Wasted Apocalypse, who is a great character. Wasted the Horsemen of Apocalypse in this whole thing, which is a great story. It was really rushed. It was just kind of... Days of Futures Past was a huge hit, so now it's like, okay, let's just adapt stories instead of like trying to make a good story for a movie. Dark Phoenix I've talked about recently enough, so I'm not going to retread too much, other than it's pretty bad. The other compliment I'll give Apocalypse is Magneto with his kids. Now, they were just there. As soon as you saw them, you knew they were going to die because Magneto must suffer and must be evil, but Michael Fassbender acted the crap out of that, so that was outstanding. But the rest of the stuff, he really did not need to be there, to the point that when talking about Dark Phoenix on the Hot Takes podcast, Billy Business, and I unfortunately can't remember the name of the guest, might have been JTE, pointed out that like Magneto's story in Dark Phoenix was basically the story he had in Apocalypse, where you easily could have just had Magneto skip out Apocalypse and pick up in Dark Phoenix, and it would have been roughly the same. But again, Fassbender was great. There was some good sequences, but on the whole, like, it really should have been 2 movies, and apparently it was planned to be 2 movies, and it just suffered for a very, very rushed story. And the X franchise from Fox has gone out on a whimper because we have no idea what's going on with New Mutants. Personal theory, it's just going to get dropped on a streaming service if we see it at all. Next up is the first X-Men movie. Yeah, when Steve and I talked about these, it really has not aged well. The flaws of the first X-Men movie is, unless your name is Wolverine, you do not get development. Mike and I have made the joke as well when they released X-Men Origins Wolverine, that it was, when people are like, it's the first Wolverine solo movie, you're like, the last 3 were. So it's really the 4th Wolverine movie. But X-Men 1 has some good stuff outside of terrible lines about when Toads get struck by lightning, it's the same thing as everything else. Some all-right action sequences, but some good themes, some good acting, and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, he was good. But on the whole, it's... Oh, and a really good score, a really underrated score. But on the whole, it kind of misused Sabretooth. Toad is, to me, not on a level threat of a villain. So it was weird that he was there. I'm kind of stuck thinking, like, why these people? Mystique got well used, although, again, that's not comic book Mystique, because in the X-Men movies, she is just Xavier's lackey, or... Sorry, not Xavier's lackey. Xavier's younger sister / apparently BFF, or Magneto's lackey / girlfriend / whatever that was. In the comics, she is very much her own agent. She's a driving force all unto herself. She has worked with both of those characters in the comics, but she's not like anybody's sidekick or anything. After X-Men 1, we go to First Class. First Class was great. It's one I really want to rewatch. The things that make First Class suffer, and I've said it before, like, if you did First Class almost properly, then we wouldn't have gotten Days of Futures Past. But let's just pretend. First Class would have been better if it wasn't so rushed. It was almost like the studio rushed it out. I think there was potentially losing some rights. But then also at the end, they're like, okay, well, we don't necessarily trust that this is going to do too well. Which, to be fair, The Last Stand did not make the most money. It didn't bomb or anything, but it didn't make the most money. And then its follow-up, X-Men Origins Wolverine, really underperformed for what they were expecting and really pissed off the fandom. So... they wanted to... You could tell they were a little gun shy. But the new cast was great. Some of the mutant choices were weird. I have no idea what Lenny Kravitz's daughter was doing there. Not that her performance was bad. It was just... I can't even remember the name. And that's the problem. So many of the first mutants that they had in First Class, I'm like, who are you? Why are you here? I don't know you. It was... They only wanted to... It was like, it's a reboot. Okay, no, it's not. It's a prequel. So it was a prequel boot. And part of me wishes that they had just rebooted it, because that was your chance to do a clean slate start for X-Men. Whereas now we're even more movies deep, and it's just kind of like, all right, when we get to Marvel, I guess we're just doing this all over again, which I'm excited, but there's almost a tiredness to that. Not knocking Marvel in any way, but it's just as franchises are rebooting more often, you're just kind of... It's almost at times like, Okay, here we go again, I guess. I would have been excited to see how they would have done it if they spread it out instead of Xavier and Magneto getting to their X-Men starting places at the end of it. I really think you could have done another film of them being besties, because then the problem with the latest quadrilogy is at the end they need to be frenemies always, and that's tired. All right, so after First Class, for the longest time I said this is the best X-Men movie, but to me it has been outpaced. X-Men 2 is a great film. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It really went Empire Strikes Back structurally, because at the top of the first act, the X-Mansion gets invaded. Friggin' Cyclops and Charles are taken. Yeah, everybody gets separated. Like, Magneto's getting abused. Really structurally goes for the heroes getting the crap kicked out of them from Empire. And then also from Empire, it separates everybody, so everybody can get development, quotation marks, because again, it's a Wolverine driving force movie. But some characters do get developed more. Not Storm, not Cyclops, but Jean does. Nightcrawler, poorly, but does get developed. The high point of the movie, for me, is twofold. The Nightcrawler opening scene in the White House is outstanding, but then also Wolverine running around the mansion just like icing fools is excellent. I will always have wanted to see like an R-rated version of that, because it would have been outstanding. It really, really could have been. I don't like violence for violence sake, but it can work with a story and also work with a character who has indestructible friggin' knives coming out of his hand. Excuse me a sec, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Much better. Yeah, X-Men 2 is great. But it is not the best X-Men movie. To me, the best X-Men movie, hands down, is X-Men Days of Futures Past. The second of the prequel movies, slash a sequel to The Last Stand. You almost have to isolate it, because what has come after undermines it a bit. At least in the sense of what comes after it in the prequel movie timeline, because there's no reasons given for why things are ignored. But Days of i.e. at the end of the movie, Mystique slash under the guise of Stryker picks up Logan, but then Logan is in possession of actual Stryker when we get to Apocalypse, and it makes no sense. But Days of Futures Past to me is an excellent movie. It deviates from the comic a lot, but to be honest, you could not do the excellent comic book as a movie, because you hadn't established the characters yet. Based on how they have established the characters and how it was an ending to the original movies while being a sequel to the prequels, you could not just have Kitty Pryde go back in time, because Kitty's like 20 years old. But so doing it with Logan made sense. Logan being the driving force of the movie worked. To me, I've said it a bunch of times, and I'll always say it. This is the movie where they cracked how to use Wolverine, because Wolverine is the cash cow, but they had him be the driving force of the story without having him be the full story, because they also developed the new cast of characters quite well. They reduced the new cast of characters really well, because it was down from, I don't know, let's say 8 or 10, and down to the returning players from First Class are Beast, Magneto, friggin' Mystique, and Charles. I think those are the only returning faces. Then we've got the new, I just can't remember his name, but Peter Dinklage, the new guy developing the Sentinels. It's a different movie, but it works. Having Logan there in the past interacting with these characters is really cool. Introducing Quicksilver for that great breakout sequence from the White House, or from the Pentagon, was great. There's not much I don't like about this movie. It's, to me, it balances. It's the first time that they balance the ensemble. They use everybody well. I liked Mystique being her own operative in this movie, like just doing things the way she wants to do them. She's not subservient to anybody. Days of Futures Past is an excellent movie. It's one of my favorite comic book movies, actually. I did eventually check out the extended cut, and I get why they cut everything. It didn't add anything to the movie to have the extra stuff. It was just like, okay, here's more people. And to me, that wasn't necessary. It was Days of Futures Past is the best X-Men team-up movie. And I will always love how at the final act, they literally throw Wolverine out of the fight. Very inventive way. And that, to me, is Magneto at his borderline most evil. Because he is just such an intimidating presence. The shot with him lifting up the Ball Stadium and then controlling the Sentinels back then, it's great. And then seeing the future characters die in brutal ways is great. Colossus gets underused, but he gets saved in a future spin-off franchise. So that is the rankings of the X-Men team-up movies. So again, we'll just the quick summation. Worst is The Last Stand. Second worst is tied between Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. Then we go to X-Men 1, then First Class, and then those are good movies. Then we get to the great ones that are X-Men 2, and then finally the best one of Days of Futures Past. And now we're going to go to the spin-offs. The absolute bottom of the barrel, worst of the spin-offs, and easily worst of the X-Men franchise is X-Men Origins Wolverine. The movie's terrible. I can't think of any actual redeeming quality. It's just a lot of meandering stuff. Oh, actually, the redeeming quality might be Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. He was great. But the rest of the movie is hot garbage. And the first 5 minutes we get of Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson. That is excellent. Pun intended. That part's great, but then anything after that is just, it's awful. It's a terrible, terrible movie. Seriously, I can't think of any way to compliment it. It's awful. It's why it underperformed. It's why people didn't like it. And then we got friggin' Barakapool, and just it's so bad. Wasted Cyclops. It wasted Gambit. We finally got Gambit, and that wasn't Gambit. You can tell I hate this movie. I do. It's awful. Next up is The Wolverine, which I really, really like this movie. So I feel weird putting it at second worst, but to me this is different. If I'm gonna rank the spinoffs, it goes terrible, the worst, and that's Origins. Then we get to good, and I think The Wolverine is good, but then everything else is outstanding. In that or great to outstanding. So The Wolverine is really good. The first 2 acts of that movie are great. There's a lot of like dark tone, not like apocalyptic dark tone, but Wolverine is this, like, all his friends, because this takes place after The Last Stand, most of the X-Men, most of his friends and loved ones are dead. They're gone. Like, he's outliving everybody, and at this time he just kind of wants to die because he is basically immortal. And that's, you can understand that. You can't really do a light version of that. But then somebody he saved in Japan, when the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, he went to see him before he died. He had been summoned. But then Viper, who is a low point of this movie, Viper's terrible, infects him with something that really, really slows down his healing factor. So he's like, oh man, I can't rely on just being a tank and taking all the bullets and healing them out. I can't remember the side actress. I can't remember the side character, what her name was, or the actress, but she did great. She was an awesome addition. and she was a mutant as well, where she could see things before they happen, basically. The movie is really, really good. It's not the most faithful adaptation of the Logan in Japan run. That was an outstanding comic book miniseries that I'd highly recommend picking up and reading if you haven't. But yeah, the Wolverine is really, really solid. The scene where he gets his healing factor back, and then it's just him fighting the guy with the samurai sword in the rain, with a lot of dark shadows and silhouettes. That is the high point of the movie for me. The third act is where it descends. Silver Samurai is there, but a big giant version that's not Silver Samurai. Adamantium, which the entire time they've been saying is indestructible, is suddenly broken easily, and they suck out his healing factor through it. It's really not well developed. The third act is where the movie kind of falls on its face a bit, but the preceding two acts are outstanding. If the third act could have kept that momentum and that tone from the first act... Oh, hi, Loons. Hi, baby. If it could have kept the tone and momentum from the first act, it would have been great. If it could have kept that, it would have been higher up on the list. Give me 1 sec. I think she wants outside. All right, there we go. So, after the Wolverine, we get the first Deadpool. Now, I know this is controversial with fans because a lot of people find Deadpool 1 to be better than Deadpool 2. I think Deadpool 1 is excellent. I really do. Again, pun intended. But I found the story in Deadpool 2 worked better. Deadpool 1, like, being the isolated revenge quest, worked. But there was some stuff, as I've said before, I've had struggles with pornography, and so there was stuff in Deadpool 1 that I had to make my own cut of the movie to watch. I had to trim around. But it had a lot of hilarious lines. It was really, really true to the character from the comic. It is one of the best book to screen adaptations of characters, because Reynolds isn't really putting too much of his own spin on it. He is quite accurate to comic book Deadpool. Deadpool 1, I can't, outside of the stuff I had to cut around, the certain sexuality stuff, that's the only thing that keeps it lower on the list. Deadpool 2, I thought was outstanding. Yes, it's not one I can recommend for everybody. If you struggle with vulgarity and violence, and any of those can, especially if you're Christian, if any of those can be a negative influence on you or affect your walk in a negative way, don't watch it. Seriously, don't. But if you can go through those things and they don't negatively impact you and they don't impact your walk with the Lord in any negative way, I can't see any harm in watching it. To me, it's very, very fun. There is little to no sexuality. There's no nudity, so I don't have to make my own cut of the flick to watch it. The X-Force gag is hilarious. This movie redeems the Juggernaut, who was reduced to a meme, or based on a meme in The Last Stand. The other thing that Deadpool 1 did that is continually developed excellently in this is Colossus is redeemed substantially and is much closer to comic book Colossus in this. The supporting cast is great. Deadpool 2 definitely pokes fun at the trope of the girlfriend being a term is fridged, where girlfriend character or love interest character is killed to develop the guy. They really have fun poking fun at that in this movie, because she does die, but then she's brought back. The post credits are quite funny, especially the part where Deadpool goes and kills Barakapool, who is just the internet nickname for Deadpool in quotations from the end of Origins Wolverine. Him showing up there and just telling Wolverine, like, hey, hold on, just killing him. And of course, more poking fun at Green Lantern. Deadpool 2 is a lot of fun. For me, I enjoy it more than the first one. And unquestionably, we get to the best spin-off of Logan. Logan is outstanding. The only flaw I can think of for this movie is it was nudity for nudity's sake. They're rated, it's like, well, we're rated R, so let's show some boobs. And that they did, unnecessarily. You can entirely cut that from the movie. Nothing affects the plot. It affects nothing. So to me, it would make it better. Just because it was just gratuitously there for no reason. Outside of that, 5 seconds, it is an outstanding movie. It is incredibly violent, but for me, it's fine. I don't think you can do the story of Logan without the violence. The violence is a part of the whole theme of the movie, where in this, it's like, this is Logan's final movie. People die in this movie. And they've had Professor X die before and then come back and be fine. In this movie, they are showing, like, nah, limbs are flying when the claws hit. Death is a reality in this movie. It is a finality. I don't think you could have just done it in a PG-13, because then you could have been like, oh, when's Charles coming back? Like, no, Charles dies in this movie. And I think it's been a while since I've watched it, but not insanely brutally, but harshly. Wolverine dies harshly, but again, you could not have done it without the violence. The violence really does set the heavier tone for the story. The language does as well. I'm not sure you could have done this flick in a PG-13. And again, it's a character with friggin' knives coming out of his hands. Like, this would happen. So, something I had been wanting to see for a while finally happening, but then also where it thematically works with the tone and the story. I'm all in. I've said in this episode, I don't like violence for violence's sake. I didn't think it was self-indulgent. It wasn't doing it just to be overly violent. It worked, is what I'm saying. All right, well, that is today's episode. Thank you for bearing with me and listening. And again, thank you, Becky, from Redeemed Otaku, for keeping me in your prayers. And dear listener, I do love you guys. It's been a crazy, stressful time recently. I still can't get into it, but I will share this funny story. I was at my doctor's recently just because I've had some stomach issues, and I said how I thought some of it might do with stress, and the doctor's like, oh, you're going through a stressful time. So then I just proceeded to lay it on him. Not in a bad way, just going through the stuff. And you see him, as I'm adding the story, as I'm adding to it, just saying all the stuff that's been going on. You see him go from typing in notes to slowly turning to the body language shifting to like mouth slightly dropping. And then at the end, he gives a very Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec, like, good Lord. Which really made me laugh and was validating. None of that is to say, like, I've got to... Let's call a spade a spade. It has been an incredibly stressful time. For those that I can keep in the know, thank you for your prayers. For those that I haven't been able to tell, but that have been praying for us, thank you so much. It's just a lot going on with work and some other stuff. But... yeah, stress sucks. Anxiety sucks. But God is wonderful and God is good, and I know we'll get through this, and God will deliver, because, well, that's what he does. I don't always understand why we're going through the things we're going through, but I know that God is good, and in the end he will use everything for his glory, and there's something here. It's rough, but I know God is getting us through. God is amazing. All right, well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of One Cross Radio. Please, if you can, hit up our coffee site if you think you can financially support us. I'm also working on a Patreon, just trying to figure out how to make that work. Or if you'd like to collect some sweet swag, please be sure to hit up our Redbubble. And if you ever have any prayer requests, please... over Facebook or Instagram, drop me a direct message. It's not anybody's business. I'm not doing this for a show, but as people pray for me, and I know the difference it makes, I want to pray for y'all as well. So if you have any prayer requests, please send them my way. You don't need to give all the details. Just say if you need prayer, and I'm happy to pray for you. All that being said, hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless, my friends. Take care. Peace.